The Rolex 24 was epic this year, as cars across the 4 classes of the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship produced some of the best action in the history of this extraordinary event. A lot happened in this race, and it's finally time to talk all about it. So this is a full race review of the 63rd edition of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Heading into 2025, 61 cars would take part at the Daytona International Speedway for this IMSA event, and the race would be set up by some brilliant qualifying sessions, which eventually saw BMW and the team Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing take their first overall IMSA pole, as Dries Vanthoor set the pace in the number 24 BMW. For the leaders in the remaining classes, the LMP2 field would be headed by the number 22 United Autosports entry, following bronze-rated driver Daniel Goldberg's lap in qualifying, while GTD Pro saw Ford Multimatic lock out the front row, with the American manufacturer on top in qualifying at Daytona for the first time since 2017. While GTD will be led by the number 120 Wright Motorsports Porsche. The start of this race went well, with Dries Vanthoor leading the prototype field away, and BMW continued to lead overall heading out of turn 1. Meanwhile, Nicololi in the better placed Acura held off a charging Felipe Nasr, as the Porsche looked to get ahead into second place. Drama soon struck though in the LMP2 class, as Nick Bull spun the number 2 United Autosports car after that entry was in third, and almost got collected by many GT cars during their start of the race. And because the LMP2 was blocking the way, Mike Rockenfeller in the number 64 Ford had to give up the lead to the number 48 Paul Miller Racing BMW in GTD Pro. But that wasn't the only lead change in a class during the start of this race, as the number 22 United Autosports car, which had started on pole, dropped back, and the new leader in LMP2 was Ben Keating in the number 52 PR1 Matheson Motorsports car. And for the first lap, Keating actually got ahead of 3 of the GTP cars and into 10th overall. But inevitably, those cars eventually got past the Oreca 07 entry. However, Keating didn't lead long, as he soon went wide at turn 5 on 2 separate occasions, which therefore handed the lead of LMP2 to the number 99 Spike Oreca entry. Back up at the front, Dries Vanthoor continued to extend the lead in the number 24 BMW, off of the number 93 Meyer-Shank Racing Acura. But while the lead stayed the same in GTP, later on some other positions shifted in the category, as drama struck for the Lamborghini SC63 car, as it was brought back into the garage with a major cooling system issue, and soon Lamborghini were forced to retire their GTP car from this race. This, in my opinion, was the most disappointing moment of the race, as this was the SC63's first Rolex 24, and the number 63 Lamborghini only completed just 1 hour of racing. Grosjean, Kvyat, and Mortara never even got to race at the Rolex 24 this year, but hopefully Lamborghini and their SC63 will jump back stronger at Sebring. Even more drama followed for Lamborghini though, this time in GTD Pro, as the number 9 Pfaff Motorsports Huracan had a wheel nut issue after leading the race, which caused the car to drop down the order, which was super unfortunate considering this car was so competitive. Later on, there was actually another problem in the pits, this time for the overall leader in GTP, as Dries Vanthoor parked the car in an awkward position during a mandatory pit stop, which resulted in the entry receiving a penalty for, quote, improper fueling because of the awkward position, which sent the entry further down the order, and it lost the lead. Kakuota therefore took over at the front in the number 93 Acura, while the number 31 Action Express Racing Cadillac and the number 7 Porsche Penske completed the top 3 at the time. This incident soon happened in the LMP2 class, as Hunter McElrea went into the wall in the number 11 TDS racing car, and this corner proved to be a difficult one for certain cars, as this was the same corner where Ben Keating went wide earlier. Drama soon struck for the former leading car in GTP, the number 93 Acura. With Alex Palou driving at the time, the car suffered a suspension issue, which would not only cause the car to take a trip to the garage, but would lose any chance of winning this race overall. Although I do think that it's worth pointing out that the Meyershank racing crew did a fantastic job to get the car back in the race, and that really takes a lot of teamwork and determination. Alex Palou's stricken Acura did result in a caution being brought out, and when the green flags were waved, it would be Laurens Vanthoor's number 7 Porsche that would lead the field away once again. But the Belgian racer was soon passed by Porsche's rivaling car from last year, the number 31 Whelen Cadillac from Action Express Racing, as Felipe Drugovich took over the lead in the V Series R. Soon, Vanthoor's WEC teammate Kevin Estra swapped the two factory cars around, with the number 6 Porsche moving into second ahead of the 7. But instead of the Cadillac ahead, Porsche Penske needed to worry about the Cadillac behind, which was the number 40 Wayne Taylor Racing entry with Kamui Kobayashi behind the wheel, and he was flying up the order from 9th place, which was turning out to be a brilliant stint from the Japanese driver. With Kobayashi continuing to move up the order, Porsche temporarily took back the lead with the number 6 car, as Estra put Drugovich down to second. Yet again though, Cadillac took back the lead, with Kobayashi making a brilliant move around the traffic to get ahead of the Porsche and move up into first. To me, Kobayashi's performance was brilliant. He went from 9th to 1st overall in a matter of a few laps, and arguably, I think he had the best stint out of any driver at the Rolex 24 this year. We know that Kamui Kobayashi is one of the most skilled sports car racers on the grid as well. Just look at his performance for the Toyota Gazoo racing team in the World Endurance Championship, or his past drives for Cadillac and IMSA during the DPI era for teams like Wayne Taylor Racing or Action Express Racing. Meanwhile, in GTD, an unfortunate issue happened as the number 44 Magnus Racing Aston Martin stopped on track and was forced to retire with an engine issue. This retirement was especially heartbreaking because this was driver Andy Lally last ever Rolex 24 Daytona, and last professional race as well, as after 23 years of racing at this event at Daytona, Lally announced earlier that he would be retiring from motorsports. This was also most likely the last time we would see Magnus Racing on the IMSA grid this year, as the team will be taking a break following Lally's retirement. This was of course not the way Andy Lally and Magnus Racing wanted to end their Rolex 24 this year, but it's best to look at the good times, like when they won the 50th Rolex 24 Daytona back in 2012. Following Kobayashi's stint, Cadillac continued to lead either with that number 40 car or the Whelen Engineering number 31 car, while Raffaele Marciello also took back the lead at one stage in the number 24 BMW, which of course had led earlier on. But don't forget about those Porsches, as the cars were showing consistent pace and reliability. Plus, Porsche Penske Motorsport had a great strategy going, and last year these were factors which allowed them to win overall. So the 963s from Porsche Penske in particular were definitely cars to keep an eye on. Drama soon struck though for one of the GTP entries, as the number 40 WTR Cadillac spun with Louis Delatraz behind the wheel, which eventually caused a multi-car crash and ended the Chrome Cadillac's chances at taking overall victory. Of course, a few other cars would be involved in this, including multiple LMP2 entries. The number 2 United Autosports entry got the worst of it, as the car would actually retire from this major accident. The number 9 Pfaff Motorsports entry would be forced to retire from this race, which was just such a shame, while the number 48 Paul Miller Racing BMW would be able to continue but would be several laps down. And don't worry, we'll hear more about that car later on. This of course was a shame for Wayne Taylor Racing in particular, as they had a car in the fight for the overall win, as proven by Kobayashi's stint earlier. And unfortunately for Cadillac, more drama would follow later on, as the number 31 Whelen Cadillac from Action Express Racing would crash on the banking with Frederick Vesti behind the wheel. But this was no fault of his, as it was a mechanical issue that forced the V Series R into the wall. Thankfully, the driver was okay, and the number 31 Cadillac wasn't completely out of the race, as it would return to the track after a trip to the garage later on. But the American brand's chances at taking the win became slim. Acura soon took over the lead with Colin Braun behind the wheel of the number 60 car, but at this point the Porsches were flying, with the best pace and reliability out of all the GTP entries, and eventually Matt Campbell took back the lead in the number 6 Porsche from Acura and Colin Braun. However though, during the nighttime hours there was an unfortunate issue for one of the 963s, as the number 5 Mustang Sampling Proton Competition Porsche was forced into the garage and eventually retired due to a suspension issue. But to be fair, there were a lot of suspension issues going on during the race, and it may have not been a problem instigated by the 963 itself. Meanwhile, in LMP2, there was a great battle happening for second place, as factory Peugeot WEC hypercar racer Malte Jakobsen was on board the 04 CrowdStrike by APR entry, and he was battling Ryan DL in the number 18 Era Motorsports car for the lead. And remember, that number 18 car won the year prior. These two entries battled hard for position, with Malte Jakobsen even sending a late move on the number 18 Era car down the inside at turn 5. As the daytime hours returned on Sunday, January 26th, Porsche Penske looked formidable, as the two cars were leading the majority of laps. At this stage, it really became clear that there were 4 cars in the fight for the overall win, and besides the 2 factory 963s, this included the number 60 Meyershank Racing Acura and the number 24 Rahal Letterman Lenigan BMW, which continued to stay on the same lap as the Penske 963s, and both cars even led on multiple occasions. Going back to LMP2 for a moment though, and there was drama. That 04 CrowdStrike by APR entry, which was battling for the lead earlier on, had a crash with Colton Herta behind the wheel. Thankfully, the Andretti IndyCar driver was able to get the car back to the pits, but the CrowdStrike Racing crew had a lot of work to do. With 5 hours to go, Porsche Penske led 1-2 with the number 6 car ahead of the 7, and Porsche pretty much stayed in the top 3 positions all the way to the end of the race. BMW, however, were continuing to show that they had a shot at taking the win. On 2 major occasions, the number 24 BMW took back the lead of this race. The first was when Kevin Magnussen was behind the wheel, as the former F1 driver was chasing down his first Rolex watch, and he eventually took the lead. But soon after, the M-Hybrid V8 was passed for first by Mathieu Jaminet during an intense battle, as the Frenchman moved ahead in the number 6 Porsche at the International Horseshoe Corner. Meanwhile, some drama was taking place over in GTD Pro. Tommy Milner was on board the number 4 Pratt Miller Corvette and chasing down Connor DeFilippi, who was on board the number 1 Paul Miller Racing BMW at the time. And soon, the Pratt Miller team made a strategy call and brought the number 4 Corvette into pit lane for an undercut on the BMW, and for a mandatory stop. And after DeFilippi came into the pits during the next lap in the BMW, Milner had closed the gap and eventually passed the BMW with warmer tires, to therefore take the lead in GTD Pro. And you see, what was happening now was that BMW and Paul Miller Racing's number 48 car, which was still in the race, even though it was out of contention for the win, was actually ahead on track of this battle, which involved the sister car, even though it was 55 laps down. And with Milner's number 4 Corvette starting to pull away from DeFilippi's number 1 BMW following the pit stops, the number 48 car with Augusto Farfus behind the wheel started to hold up Tommy Milner, which resulted in the Corvette being sandwiched between 2 factory BMW cars. What Farfus's defense was resulting in was Milner losing a lot of time to the number 1 BMW in the fight for the win. The 48 BMW's blocking eventually resulted in contact being made between the race-leading Corvette and BMW entries, which gave the number 4 car damage. And it was also announced that Farfus was instructed by race control to come down pit row as the number 48 BMW was being handed a drive-through penalty for the blocking. And when the number 48 BMW came into the pit lane to serve the penalty, this is when we saw the middle finger, as Tommy Milner flipped off Augusto Farfus in the BMW, as he visibly showed his frustration. And also, keep in mind that Tommy Milner in the number 4 Corvette did that gesture while traveling over 180 miles per hour on the banking, which in itself takes a lot of bravery to do. Unfortunately, that contact with the number 1 BMW did result in the Corvette coming down pit lane as well to fix the issue at the back of the car, and the number 4 entry would have to play the recovery game for the rest of the race. Meanwhile, over in LMP2, drama soon struck for a former leader of this race, as the number 88 PCOM racing car stopped out on track with a mechanical issue. Former Alpine hypercar racer Mathieu Vaxivière was visibly frustrated, as this car was leading and was forced to retire after completing 697 laps, which was just so unfortunate. Eventually taking over the lead in LMP2 would be Christian Rasmussen in the number 99 Spike AO racing car. But of course, considering how competitive the P2 field is, the lead would change hands on multiple occasions after this. Meanwhile, in GTP, Porsche Penske, who was leading the race with the number 7 car at the time, made a strategy call, with Nick Tandy coming into the pits for a mandatory stop, and handing things over to Felipe Nasr for the final stint. And remember, the Brazilian was the driver that Porsche put in the car last year, and defended the lead from Blomqvist in the Cadillac at the time, during that epic battle in the 2024 event. And so for 2025, the team were once again putting their faith in Nasr to get the job done once again. With just under 2 hours remaining, Nasr would lead the field to green, following a caution period due to that PCOM Racing LMP2 car which I mentioned just a moment ago. But the Porsche driver would have to defend the lead with everything he had, because pole sitter Dries Vanthoor in the number 24 BMW was creating an intense fight for the overall win, as he looked to take BMW back to the top step at Daytona for the first time since 1976. Later on though, things got better for Porsche, because while Nasr was leading, Estra got ahead of the number 24 BMW to put the second 963 into second place, and when the GTP pit stops came around again, the lead changed hands again. The number 6 car pit after the number 7, and as Estra handed things off to Matt Campbell for the final driver stint of the number 6 car, that entry was able to maintain the lead of this race, while Nasr's number 7 car dropped to 3rd, behind the sister car and that BMW. After a small off-track moment for the number 24 car while Dries Vanthoor was trying to take back the lead, the number 6 Porsche was actually able to grow the gap. But then, things changed after the number 45 GTD Lamborghini from Wayne Taylor Racing stopped on track and brought out the final caution period of the day. This bunched up the field once again, and when the green flags came out for the final time at Daytona, it was Matt Campbell that led the field to green, and Nasr was able to get ahead in the Porsche of Vanthoor, who went wide in the BMW. Elsewhere, with 40 minutes to go, there was some intense action going on in the GT field. With Dennis Olsen out in front in the number 65 Ford Mustang, the battle for second was getting really exciting, and cars even went 3 wide at one stage. However, during this amazing battle, contact was made between the AO Racing Porsche and the Get Speed Mercedes, which did result in, funny enough, Rexy losing his front teeth, as the bumper of that Porsche was ripped off. Later on, and I can't believe I'm saying this, more drama for a leader in LMP2 happened, as Paul-Louis Chaton went off track in the number 18 Era Motorsport car, which eventually relinquished the lead to the number 52 PR1 Matheson Motorsports car. But Matthias Beck, who was on board that car, eventually was passed by the number 8 Tower Motorsports LMP2 with Sebastian Bourdais behind the wheel. And remember, that car was involved in the multi-car crash earlier in the night. We can't forget about GTD, as an intense battle was happening between Matt Bell's number 13 AWA Corvette and the number 27 Heart of Racing Aston Martin, and these cars were battling side by side at multiple points for the lead and eventually the win of GTD. Back to the GTP class, and there was further good news for Porsche, which was subsequently bad news for BMW, as Vanthoor's car had to come into the pit lane with bodywork impacting the drivability of that M Hybrid V8, which put BMW completely out of contention for the win. Later on, the drama continued between BMW and Corvette, as the same cars that were fighting for the win in GTD Pro, the number 1 BMW and the number 4 Corvette, once again made contact within the final minutes of this 24-hour endurance race. but there were different drivers on board the cars at the time, with Nico Varroni in the number 4 and Kelvin van der Linde in the number 1. But unfortunately, this time the BMW car came off worse, as van der Linde had a spin and dropped outside the podium places. And later on, the number 4 Corvette was handed a penalty for the incident, which forced the Z06 GT3R outside the podium places too. Up at the front, Porsche's only opposition came from an arch nemesis, and one of the most talented drivers in the GTP field, Tom Blomqvist, who was flying aboard that number 60 Acura, and looking to take Meyershank Racing back to the top at Daytona. Soon these two Porsches started to battle for the overall victory, and remember, they're on the same team, as Felipe Nasr eventually got past his former teammate Matt Campbell to take the lead in the number 7 car. And with Nasr slowly growing the gap, Campbell defended as long as he could against that Acura, but eventually Blomqvist got past into second, with just 4 minutes remaining of this 24-hour endurance race. And just like that, we had a pretty similar situation to what happened last year. Blomqvist chasing down Nasr for the win in the closing laps, just like in 2024. But ultimately, just like before, Nasr proved why Porsche Penske put their faith in him to take the car to the checkered flag, as Nasr crossed the line first and defended against Blomqvist once again to allow Porsche Penske Motorsport to win back-to-back at Daytona. And it also gave Porsche their 20th overall win at the Rolex 24 at Daytona, and the first time that they have ever done that in any motorsport endurance race. Felipe Nasr, Nick Tandy, and Lawrence Vanthoor would claim the overall win in the number 7 Porsche, which would also allow Tandy to become the first driver in history to win all major 24-hour endurance races, which included Le Mans, Daytona, Nürburgring, and Spa. Second place would go to the number 60 Meyershank Racing Acura, while the sister Penske entry, the number 6 Porsche, would finish in third to round off the podium. In the LMP2 class, the number 8 Tower Motorsports car initially won this race. However, after the event completed, IMSA's technical inspection confirmed that the car's win would be removed because of skid plate wear violating the rules. But keep in mind that this wasn't the fault of the Tower Motorsports team, nor did they break the rules in any way. The number 22 United Autosports entry was therefore declared the winner, with James Allen, Paul di Resta, Daniel Goldberg, and Rasmus Lind taking the victory with that Oreca 07 entry. The remaining podium positions were taken by the number 74 Riley in second, and the number 52 PR1 Matheson Motorsports car completing the podium in third. In GTD Pro, it was a historic win for Ford and Multimatic Motorsports, as the Ford Mustang GT3 achieved its first win in any motorsports competition. The number 65 car would be the entry that would secure this result, with Christopher Mies, Dennis Olsen, and Frederick Vervich taking the win. Finishing just behind the Mustang would be the number 3 Pratt Miller Corvette, while the sister Multimatic entry, the number 64 Ford, would finish in third to complete the podium. In GTD, it would be an amazing win for the small Canadian team of AWA, as this squad would take their first win in the GT Daytona category. The number 13 Corvette would take this win, with Matt Bell, Ore Fidani, Lars Kern, and Marvin Kirchhofer taking the victory. Finishing runner-up in GT Daytona would be the number 120 Wright Motorsports Porsche, which qualified on pole, while the number 27 Heart of Racing Aston Martin would complete the podium. When it comes to the championship standings in GTP, the number 7 Porsche Penske starts off this season where they left off the last, at the top, with 380 points achieved so far, while the number 60 Meyershank Racing Acura is in second after its second place finish at Daytona, with the number 6 Porsche Penske Motorsport entry in third. The number 24 BMW from Team RLL is placed in fourth in the standings, while the number 10 Wayne Taylor Racing Cadillac completes the top 5. Over in LMP2, the number 22 United Autosports car is at the top with 385 points, followed by the number 74 Riley and the number 52 PR1 Matheson Motorsports entry completing the top 3. The number 18 Era Motorsport car is in fourth, followed by the number 99 AO Racing Spike LMP2 in 5th. In the GTD Pro class, the number 65 Ford is at the top considering it won this race, while the number 3 Corvette from Pratt Miller Motorsports is in 2nd, with the 64 Ford in 3rd. The number 1 Paul Miller Racing BMW is in 4th, followed by the number 69 Get Speed Mercedes completing the top 5. Finally, in GTD, it's the number 13 AWA Corvette at the top with 365 points, followed by the 120 Wright Motorsports Porsche, the 27 Heart of Racing Aston Martin, the number 57 Windward Racing Mercedes, and finally, out of the top 5 is the number 96 Turner Motorsport BMW. So that completes my race review of the 2025 Rolex 24 Daytona. What did you think about this entire race? And are you looking forward to the next round at Sebring? Well, make sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like endurance racing, definitely subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because I'm releasing videos on a weekly basis regarding the WEC, IMSA, Intercontinental GT, and much more. To watch more content now, check out these suggested videos I've put on screen. For now though, that's all from me. Thanks for watching.